A bullied teen stood up to her tormentors, never guessing they were secretly testing her courage. 17-year-old Ellie Mason stared at the hateful words scrawled across her locker, her fingertips hovering inches from the red marker that spelled out FREAK. The hallway around her buzzed with the usual morning chaos, but Ellie stood in her own bubble of silence, a familiar hollow feeling spreading through her chest. She swallowed hard, blinked back the hot sting of tears. Not here. Not now. Crying would only make it worse. 3 years at Westlake High, and the pattern had never changed. The whispers that followed her through hallways. The accidental shoulder checks that sent her books scattering across the floor. The group chats she wasn't supposed to know about, filled with photos taken of her when she wasn't looking. And always, always, the ringleader, Vanessa Collins, with her perfect blonde hair and circle of devoted followers. Ellie tugged the sleeve of her oversized sweater down over her knuckles, a nervous habit she'd developed over years of trying to disappear. The fabric was soft, worn thin at the edges. A shield, however inadequate, against the world. Need help cleaning that off? The voice startled her. Ellie turned to find Mr. Harmon, the literature teacher, his kind eyes creased with concern behind wire-rimmed glasses. "It's fine," she mumbled, dropping her gaze. "I'll get it." Mr. Harmon handed her a tissue from his pocket. "You know, my door is always open if you want to talk." Ellie nodded without looking up, a gesture as automatic as breathing. Adults always said things like that, but what could they really do? The tissue trembled slightly in her hand as she began scrubbing at the marker. "I mean it, Ellie," he added quietly before walking away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. The tissue tore against the rough metal surface, leaving red smudges that looked like blood. Appropriate, Ellie thought. This place was killing her, one small cut at a time. The first period bell rang, sending a jolt of anxiety through her system. She was going to be late for calculus, and Mrs. Peterson never let tardiness slide. Abandoning her efforts, Ellie grabbed her books and hurried down the corridor, keeping her head down, a skill perfected through years of practice. Home was no sanctuary. The small apartment she shared with her mother had grown quieter since Dad left 3 years ago. Mom worked double shifts at the hospital, trying to keep them afloat. When she was home, exhaustion hung around her like a heavy cloak. They orbited each other carefully, each afraid to add to the other's burden. That evening, Ellie sat cross-legged on her bed, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face as she worked on her college application essay. Her room was small but meticulously organized, books arranged by color on the shelf, a corkboard covered with nature photos she'd taken during solitary walks in the park, fairy lights strung around her window frame. Little touches of beauty she clung to. The prompt stared back at her. "Describe a challenge you've faced and how it has shaped you." Ellie's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How could she possibly explain? How the bright, outgoing child she once was had slowly folded herself smaller and smaller until she practically disappeared. How she'd taught herself to navigate the world like a ghost, unseen and unheard. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Probably Mom saying she'd be late again. But the name that flashed on the screen made her stomach lurch. Vanessa Collins. For a moment, Ellie just stared at it. Vanessa had never texted her before. Against her better judgment, she opened the message. "Meeting at the old gazebo in Willow Park tomorrow after school. Come alone. We need to talk about your situation." Ellie's heart hammered against her ribs. Your situation? What did that even mean? A trap, almost certainly. The gazebo was isolated, especially this time of year when the park emptied out by late afternoon. She should ignore it. Block the number. Tell someone. But a tiny, defiant spark flickered in the pit of her stomach. 3 years of running. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of silence. "I'll be there," she typed back before she could change her mind, then threw the phone onto her pillow as if it had burned her fingers. Sleep evaded her that night. The wind rattled her window and shadows played across her ceiling. What was she thinking? Going alone to meet the same people who had made her high school life a living nightmare? But buried beneath the fear was something else, a whisper of the person she used to be. The girl who spoke her mind, who stood up straight, who believed she deserved space in the world. Morning arrived with steel-gray skies threatening rain. Ellie dressed with unusual care, jeans without holes, her least baggy sweater, even a touch of her mother's mascara. Armor in its way. If this was to be some kind of reckoning, she wouldn't face it looking defeated. The school day passed in a blur of anxiety. Each time she caught a glimpse of Vanessa or her friends, Zoe, Madison, and Taylor, they were huddled together, voices low, occasionally glancing in her direction. The knot in Ellie's stomach tightened. When the final bell rang, she texted her mom that she'd be late. Study group, she lied, and headed toward Willow Park, her steps leaden but determined. Autumn had painted the park in rust and gold. Leaves crunched beneath her feet as she followed the winding path to the gazebo. The structure stood on a small hill, white paint peeling, surrounded by a carpet of fallen leaves. And waiting inside, just as promised, was Vanessa. But she wasn't alone. The entire group was there, Zoe leaning against a railing, Madison sitting on a bench, and Taylor standing beside Vanessa, 4 against 1. Ellie's courage nearly deserted her then. She stopped at the base of the gazebo steps, her hands deep in her pockets to hide their trembling. "You came," Vanessa said, sounding almost surprised. "What do you want?" Ellie's voice emerged steadier than she felt. Vanessa stepped forward. In the golden afternoon light, she looked different somehow. Less the untouchable queen bee, and more human. There was something in her expression Ellie couldn't quite read. "We want to talk to you about the Firelight Society," Vanessa said. Ellie frowned. "The what?" "It's a club," Zoe chimed in, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "But not an official school club. It's something else." "What does this have to do with me?" Ellie asked, confusion momentarily overriding her fear. The 4 girls exchanged glances. Finally, Vanessa spoke again. "We want you to join." A startled laugh escaped Ellie's lips before she could stop it. "Is this some kind of joke?" "It's not a joke," Madison said quietly. "We're serious." "Why would I join anything with the people who've made my life hell for 3 years?" Ellie demanded, anger suddenly flaring hot and bright. "The freak on my locker yesterday, was that an invitation too?" A flash of what looked almost like shame crossed Vanessa's face. That wasn't supposed to happen. Taylor got carried away. Taylor at least had the decency to look down at her shoes. "Carried away? Do you have any idea?" Ellie's voice broke. 3 years of hurt rose in her throat like a tide. The comments, the exclusion, the accidental trips in the cafeteria, the rumors. "You've been torturing me since freshman year, and now you want me to join your club? Are you insane?" The words hung in the air between them. For once, Ellie wasn't the one who looked away first. "You're right," Vanessa said finally. "We've been terrible to you. But it wasn't what you think." "Enlighten me, then," Ellie challenged, a newfound courage burning in her chest. Vanessa gestured toward the bench. "Please, sit. Let me explain." Against her better judgment, Ellie climbed the steps and perched on the edge of the bench, maintaining distance between herself and the others. "The Firelight Society isn't just a club," Vanessa began. "It's been at Westlake for over 50 years. It's passed down from one group of students to the next. We ... find people with something special. Courage, resilience, the ability to survive and stay true to themselves even when the world is against them." Ellie stared at her. "So what, you bullied me as some kind of twisted recruitment technique?" "It's a test," Zoe said. "Everyone who's considered for membership goes through it. We all did before we were members. Different tests for different people, but always testing the same thing, what you're made of, deep down." "That's sick," Ellie whispered. "Maybe it is," Vanessa admitted. "But it works. Look at you, you're still here. Still standing. 3 years and we never broke you. You bent, but you never broke." "And yesterday's text was what, the final exam?" Ellie asked bitterly. Madison nodded. "Coming here alone, knowing it might be a trap, that took real courage." Ellie stood abruptly. "This is insane. You can't justify years of cruelty as some noble character-building exercise. You hurt me. Every single day. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep? How many days I couldn't eat because my stomach was in knots? How I stopped raising my hand in class because I was afraid of drawing attention? You didn't test me, you damaged me." A heavy silence fell over the gazebo. The wind picked up, sending leaves swirling around them. "You're right," Vanessa said finally, her voice small. "And I'm sorry. We all are. But that's exactly why we need you in the society. To change it. To make it better." "What are you talking about?" "The society is powerful." Taylor spoke up for the first time. "It has connections. Alumni who've gone on to run companies, work in government. Resources. The ability to actually change things at Westlake and beyond. But it's stuck in traditions that hurt people. We want to reform it," Vanessa explained. "Change how new members are chosen. Use its influence for actual good. But we need people like you. People with real moral courage, not just the ability to endure. People who will stand up and say, "This is wrong," even to those with power over them. Ellie looked at each of their faces, searching for signs of deception. "Why should I believe anything you say?" "Come to a meeting," Zoe suggested. "See for yourself. If you still want nothing to do with us afterward, we'll leave you alone completely. We'll even make sure no one else bothers you for the rest of high school. And if I say no right now, then we respect that," Vanessa said simply. "And the offer to ensure you're left alone still stands. You've earned that much at least." Ellie wrapped her arms around herself, mind racing. It was tempting to tell them all to go to hell, but something else nagged at her. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe the thought that if what they said was true, she could help ensure no one else went through what she had. "One meeting," she said finally. "And if I don't like what I see, or if this turns out to be another cruel joke, I'm done. And I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you really are." Relief washed over Vanessa's face. "That's fair." Friday night, 8 p.m. The old boathouse by Miller's Lake. As Ellie turned to leave, Vanessa called after her, "For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand why we did what we did." Ellie didn't respond. The apology felt hollow against years of torment. She walked away with her head high, autumn leaves crunching beneath her feet, the weight of their eyes on her back. The next 2 days passed in a strange limbo. The usual torment stopped. No comments, no accidental collisions, no stolen items from her locker. Instead, there were small acknowledgments. A nod from Zoe in the hallway, a door held open by Taylor. Ellie didn't know what to make of it. It felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane, uncertain if the worst had passed or was yet to come. Friday evening arrived cold and clear, stars pricking the velvet sky. Ellie stood before her mirror, debating what one wore to meet a secret society. She settled on black jeans, boots, and a dark blue sweater that brought out the color of her eyes. Her mother had already left for her night shift, so there was no need for explanations. Miller's Lake lay on the outskirts of town, a 20-minute bike ride from her apartment. As Ellie pedaled through the growing darkness, doubt crept in. Was she being foolish, walking into what could still be an elaborate prank? But something in Vanessa's eyes that day in the gazebo had seemed genuine. Regret, perhaps, or hope. The boathouse emerged from the darkness, an old wooden structure silhouetted against the moonlit lake. Light glowed from its windows, warm and inviting. Ellie chained her bike to a nearby tree and approached cautiously. She had expected to find just the 4 girls inside. Instead, the boathouse was filled with at least 20 students, many faces she recognized from Westlake's halls. The space had been transformed, old rowing equipment pushed to the walls, fairy lights strung across wooden beams, a circle of chairs arranged in the center. A fire burned in an old metal stove in the corner, casting dancing shadows. Vanessa spotted her first, breaking away from a conversation to approach. "You came," she said with that same note of surprise from the gazebo. "I said I would." Ellie glanced around. "What is all this?" "The Firelight Society, the real one." Vanessa gestured toward the circle. "Come, we're about to begin." Hesitantly, Ellie followed her to the circle, taking an empty chair. She recognized faces from different social circles at school. The quiet chess club president, a star basketball player, the girl who organized the environmental cleanup days, a boy who'd won state awards for his poetry. Not the collection of popular kids she'd expected. As if reading her thoughts, Vanessa leaned over. "The society isn't about popularity or social standing. It's about character, about making a difference." Before Ellie could respond, an older girl, a senior Ellie recognized as the student body president, stood and moved to the center of the circle. "We gather in the light of the fire," she began, her voice carrying easily through the space, "to acknowledge our strength, to confess our wrongs, and to commit to making our world better. Who brings a new member to our circle?" Vanessa stood. "I do. This is Ellie Mason. She has endured the test of isolation and cruelty with dignity. She has shown courage by confronting her tormentors directly. And she has demonstrated wisdom by questioning traditions that cause harm." Murmurs of approval rippled through the circle. Ellie felt her cheeks warm, uncomfortable with the attention. "Ellie," the senior addressed her directly, "before you decide whether to join us, you should understand what we do. The Firelight Society was founded in 1972 by students who wanted to create real change at Westlake and in our community. Over the years, our methods evolved. Some, like the testing of potential members through adversity, have strayed from our original purpose. She gestured to Vanessa. Some of our current members believe these methods have become harmful rather than helpful. They've advocated for change. Your invitation is part of that change. What exactly do you do? Ellie asked, finding her voice. We identify problems at school and in the community, and we fix them, a boy across the circle explained, quietly behind the scenes. We have connections, alumni in positions of influence, resources most high school students don't have access to. Like what? The senior smiled. 3 years ago, when the school board was going to cut the arts program, anonymous donations suddenly appeared to fund it. Last year, when that freshman was living in his car, a mysterious scholarship covered housing. When the principal tried to cancel the LGBT+ alliance, unexpected pressure from powerful alumni changed his mind. Ellie's skepticism must have shown on her face because Vanessa added, "It sounds unbelievable, I know. But it's real. Show her the Hayes situation." The senior nodded and pulled out her phone, pulling up news articles and emails, passing them to Ellie. As she read through them, her eyes widened. A clear paper trail showing how the society had gathered evidence of a predatory teacher's behavior and ensured his removal, all without ever revealing their involvement. Why all the secrecy? Ellie asked, handing the phone back. Why not just do these things openly? Power often works best in the shadows, the senior explained. When people know you're behind something, they resist. When change seems organic, they accept it. And the society protects its members. Many have gone on to positions where public ties to activist work could be problematic. So what now? Ellie looked around the circle. What do you want from me? Vanessa took a deep breath. We want your help reforming the society itself. The testing system is just one tradition that needs to change. We need fresh perspectives, people who haven't been indoctrinated into thinking cruelty is justified by good intentions. For the next hour, Ellie listened as members shared stories of both the society's accomplishments and its failures. She learned about its structure, its resources, its history. With each revelation, her skepticism gave way to cautious interest. What they described was problematic in many ways, but the potential to do real good was undeniable. You don't have to decide tonight, the senior told her as the meeting wound down. Take time to think, but know that your voice would be valued here. As people began to disperse, Ellie found herself alone with Vanessa by the dying fire. I still don't understand, Ellie said quietly. Why me? After everything you put me through? Vanessa stared into the embers. My sister was like you, she said finally. Quiet, thoughtful, bullied mercilessly at her school. No society there to eventually explain why. She tried to... Her voice caught. She survived, but barely. When I saw what was happening to you freshman year, something in me just twisted. I thought I was following tradition, doing what was expected as a society member. But I was also angry at bullies, at the world, at myself for not protecting my sister. She looked up, eyes shining with unshed tears. I channeled it all into testing you. Pushed harder than I should have, but you never broke. You bent, but you kept going. And somewhere along the way, I realized we were becoming the very thing I hated. Bullies hiding behind excuses. The fire popped and cracked in the silence between them. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Vanessa continued. What I did was wrong, regardless of the reasons. But I am asking for your help to make sure it never happens to anyone else. Ellie gazed into the dying fire, thoughts swirling like the smoke rising from the embers. I need time, she said finally. Of course. The ride home was a blur, Ellie's mind too full to notice the cold air stinging her cheeks or the stars overhead. By the time she reached her apartment, a decision had begun to crystallize. The weekend passed in reflection. Monday morning, Ellie approached her locker with the usual caution, only to find something unexpected. It had been repainted overnight, the scratches and marks of 3 years of abuse covered with fresh blue paint. A small note was taped to it, "Whatever you decide." Ellie stood there, fingertips resting on the smooth new surface, something shifting inside her like ice breaking up on a river after winter. During lunch period, she found Vanessa sitting with the others at their usual table. Conversations hushed as Ellie approached, trays around the cafeteria lowering as students watched this unprecedented scene unfold. May I join you? Ellie asked, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. Vanessa's surprise gave way to a cautious smile. Of course. As Ellie sat down, the buzz of conversation slowly resumed around them, punctuated by curious glances. I've been thinking about your offer, Ellie said quietly. And I'll join the society on one condition. Ellie met each of their gazes in turn. The testing system ends completely. Not reformed. Ended. The four exchanged glances. Some of the older members won't like that, Zoe warned. Then they'll have to deal with it, Ellie replied. If you're serious about wanting me to help change things, that's where we start. No more creating trauma to test character. There are better ways to find strength in people. A slow smile spread across Vanessa's face. I was hoping you'd say something like that. Does that mean you agree? It means you've just become the society's newest reform advocate, and you've got at least 4 votes behind you. She extended her hand across the table. Partners? Ellie hesitated only briefly before taking it. Partners? That handshake marked the beginning of a transformation, not just for Ellie, but for the society and eventually Westlake itself. The change wasn't immediate or easy. There were heated debates at boathouse meetings, resistance from older members, even threats to contact alumni who might disagree with the new direction. But Ellie discovered something surprising about herself in those confrontations. The voice she'd suppressed for years returned stronger than before. The girl who had learned to make herself small now stood tall, articulating a vision of a society that built people up rather than breaking them down to test their resilience. By spring, the first new members were welcomed without having endured months of orchestrated suffering. Instead, they were chosen for courage already demonstrated. The quiet sophomore who had established a mental health awareness campaign after his brother's suicide. The freshman who organized fellow students to support a classmate whose family had lost everything in a fire. The junior who risked her social standing to report a popular athlete's predatory behavior. For Ellie personally, the transformation was equally profound. The hallways that had once felt like gauntlets to be navigated became just hallways again. Vanessa, Zoe, Madison, and Taylor, her former tormentors, became first allies, then gradually, tentatively friends. Not perfect friends. There were awkward moments, painful conversations, days when the weight of their shared history felt too heavy to bear, but also moments of surprising connection, of laughter, of collaborative triumph when a society project succeeded. One afternoon in late April, Ellie sat alone on the steps of the gazebo where everything had changed, laptop balanced on her knees, putting the finishing touches on her college essay. Describe a challenge you've faced and how it has shaped you. Her fingers moved swiftly over the keys as she described not the bullying itself, but the journey afterward. Discovering her voice, challenging a harmful tradition, building something better from the broken pieces of the past. Not a story of victimhood, but of transformation and agency. A shadow fell across her screen. Ellie looked up to find Vanessa standing at the foot of the steps, golden afternoon light catching in her hair. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, the question carrying echoes of Ellie's own words in the cafeteria months before. Ellie nodded, making space on the step beside her. "College essay?" Vanessa asked, glancing at the screen. "Yeah, finally figured out what to write about. Let me guess, how terrible I was and how you triumphed over adversity." There was an attempt at lightness in Vanessa's tone, but Ellie caught the underlying vulnerability. After all these months, the guilt still lingered. "Actually, no," Ellie said. "It's about learning that people are more complicated than they seem. That sometimes the worst moments can lead to unexpected transformations. That forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but about creating a different future." Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, eyes fixed on the carpet of new spring grass at their feet. "Do you think you'll ever really forgive me?" "Completely?" Ellie closed her laptop, considering the question carefully. "I think forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a process. Some days are easier than others. But I'm getting there." The honesty hung between them, neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, simply true. "The society voted on your proposal," Vanessa said finally, changing the subject. "The complete elimination of the testing system has been officially approved. Unanimous vote." Ellie's eyes widened. "Unanimous? Even the seniors? Even them? Your speech last week, it changed minds. You have a gift for making people see things differently," Vanessa smiled. "You're going to be elected leader next year, you know. Everyone's already talking about it." The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. From bullied outcast to leading the most influential secret organization at Westlake, a journey she could never have imagined that day she stared at the word "freak" scrawled across her locker. "I couldn't have done it without you," Ellie admitted. "As weird as that sounds." "No, you couldn't have," Vanessa agreed with unexpected frankness. "But not in the way you think." Not because you needed my bullying to become strong. You were always strong. What you needed was the opportunity to show it, to yourself most of all. Ellie considered this, watching a pair of birds chase each other between the trees. Maybe we all need that sometimes, the right moment to discover who we really are. And who are you, Ellie Mason? Vanessa asked softly. Ellie smiled, the expression reaching all the way to her eyes for perhaps the first time in years. I'm still figuring that out. But I know I'm not afraid anymore. Not of you, not of high school, not of what comes next. The afternoon light slanted golden through the trees as they sat together, former tormentor and victim, now co-architects of something new. Not quite friends in the simplest sense, but something perhaps more meaningful. Two people who had seen the worst in each other and chose to believe in the best. Above them, buds were forming on the gazebo's climbing roses, tiny promises of beauty yet to come. In the distance, the lake glittered like possibilities, endless and bright. And in the space between two girls sitting on the steps of an old gazebo, something fragile and precious continued to grow, not despite the broken past, but because of how carefully they had gathered the pieces and made them into something new.